The laughter erupted before a single word could be spoken. In the middle of a glittering Lagos reception hall, chandeliers blazing, cameras flashing, 500 of Nigeria's most powerful people watching, every head turned as Adaeze Onu walked in. She was breathtaking, poised, successful, untouchable. But the man beside her? He wore simple traditional attire. No designer suit, no flash, no attempt to match the room, just himself, and the room could not make sense of it. Someone near the back laughed first, then another, a whisper too loud to be accidental. Is this a joke? Even board members exchanged glances. But the man at the center of it all? He did not flinch. He did not explain himself. He simply looked around the room, calm, unreadable. And for one strange, suspended moment, the laughter felt misplaced, as if no one truly understood what they were witnessing. Keep watching. Because nothing about this story is what it seems. Lagos does not slow down for anyone. Not for traffic, not for politics, and certainly not for feelings. From the floor-to-ceiling windows of her corner office on the 40th floor of Onu Holdings headquarters, the city stretched in every direction, a living, breathing organism of ambition. Headlights crawled along the expressway below. Tower cranes blinked red in the distance. Somewhere a generator hummed. Lagos was always alive. But up here, behind reinforced glass and recycled air, everything felt controlled, managed, isolated. Adaeze stood with her arms folded, her own reflection staring back from the darkened window. She looked exactly like the woman the world had decided she was. Composed, precise, formidable. Her linen blazer was perfectly pressed, her natural hair pinned with deliberate elegance, her expression, as always, giving nothing away. But her reflection could not show what lived behind her eyes: the exhaustion, the loneliness that came not from being alone, but from being surrounded by people who only saw the title. At just 32, Adaeze had done what most people only dreamed about. She had built Onu Holdings from a registered business address and a vision board into one of the fastest-rising conglomerates in Nigeria, spanning real estate, logistics, and emerging technology. Business publications called her the Iron Compass of Lagos. Investors called her a generational talent. Competitors called her dangerous. But none of them knew where she had come from, and she never told them. She closed her eyes for a moment, and the glass office disappeared. In its place, a narrow apartment in Mushin, peeling paint, a ceiling fan that worked only when it wanted to, her mother's voice steady even when everything around them was not. Adaeze, nobody will come to hand you anything. If you want a seat at the table, you build the table yourself. Her mother had worked double shifts cleaning government offices, and on weekends she cooked and sold food from a cooler outside the local bus park. There had been months when dinner was Gary and hope. There had been mornings Adaeze walked to school holding her shoes to preserve the soles. Those years had not broken her. They had made her someone who could not afford to stop. When her mother passed during her second year at university, Adaeze had been 19 years old, alone in a city that owed her nothing. She had gone back to school the following Monday, not because she was not grieving, but because stopping felt like losing her mother twice. A soft knock pulled her back to the present. "Come in," she said without turning. Her chief of staff, Bimpi Sool, stepped in quietly, sharp as always, heels clicking against polished concrete. Bimpi had been with Adaeze through every chapter of the rise. She was not just efficient, she was loyal. "You are still here," Bimpi said, glancing at the clock on the wall. "It is almost midnight." Adaeze exhaled. "The quarterly review does not care about the time." Bimpi walked closer, lowering a tablet onto the desk. "Tomorrow's board meeting," she said carefully. "It will not be straightforward." That made Adaeze turn. "It never is." Bimpi hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Enough for Adaeze to catch it. "Chief Eze Okoye has been talking," Bimpi continued. "He thinks your independence is becoming a liability to the brand." Adaeze's expression did not change. "My independence built this brand." "Yes," Bimpi said softly, "but that is not how they frame it." Silence. The kind that says more than words. In the world Adais now occupied, success was not its own reward. Power had unspoken rules, ancient rules dressed in boardroom language. You did not just rise, you aligned, you married strategically, you attached yourself to something bigger, something that made the men around you feel safe. Adais had refused, every time. I did not build this company to hand pieces of it away through marriage negotiations, she said, her voice quiet. That is not what they are asking for, Bimpy replied. Isn't it? Bimpy did not answer. Instead, she turned the tablet screen toward her. A man smiled confidently from a magazine cover. Sleek, photogenic, groomed for success. Tunde Adeleke, Bimpe said. Son of the Adeleke Group chairman, London educated. The board believes a strategic union would stabilize shareholder confidence. Stabilize, Adais repeated flatly. Then, no. Bimpy's shoulders tensed. Adais, no. She pushed the tablet aside. I will not marry a man because it makes a group of old men sleep better at night. Bimpy stepped closer, lowering her voice. This is not just noise. If you do not give them something to hold on to, they will find a way to remove you. Adais turned back to the window. Let them try. A long pause stretched between them. Outside the city flickered, indifferent. Finally, Bimpy spoke again. One more thing. The media is already picking it up. The marriage narrative. Why you are still single. Whether someone like you can lead long-term without stability. Adais almost laughed. There was no humor in it. So that was the game. Undermine her publicly, corner her privately, force a choice she had never agreed to make. She had seen this playbook before, never at this scale. Thank you, Bimpe, she said. Bimpe nodded and left. The door closed with barely a sound, and once again Adais was alone. But this silence felt different, heavier, as if it were closing in on something. She leaned back in her chair, fingertips resting on the desk. For the first time in a long while, doubt crept in. Not about her ability, not about her judgment, but about the cost of standing alone in a system designed to punish exactly that. She had built everything with her own hands. Every deal, every risk, every 3 a.m. decision. And now the same world that had once underestimated her was closing ranks, not because she had failed, but because she refused to belong to them. She did not know it yet, but her life was already moving toward something. Toward someone she could not plan for, someone who existed completely outside her world and who would quietly change everything about it. On the other side of the city, in the kind of neighborhood Lagos tourists never see and Lagos elites never visit, Emeka Obi was already awake. Not because he had to be, because he chose to be. He stood in the small compound behind his rented flat in Ketu, watching the morning begin. Generators from the next street over were winding down. A pepper seller 2 buildings away was setting up her table. A rooster somewhere was working overtime. Emeka breathed it all in, slow, deliberate, present. There was nothing rushed about him, nothing performing. He crouched down and picked up a loose brick at the edge of the compound wall, one that had been shifting for weeks. He pressed it back into place with a steadiness that came from practice, not hurry. A voice from behind him. You fix that wall before you fix breakfast? He turned. His neighbor, Mama Ngozi, a woman of indeterminate age and enormous warmth, stood in her doorway, arms folded, a fond disapproval on her face. The wall needed it, Emeka said simply. She sucked her teeth, smiling. Come and eat, before you repair the whole street. He carried her market bag inside. She argued. He carried it anyway. Mama Ngozi had no one nearby. Her children were abroad, her husband gone years ago. And Emeka had quietly become the person who made sure her light bill was paid, her food was delivered, her apartment door stopped sticking. He did not announce it, did not broadcast it, he just did it. Later, walking back toward his own flat, his phone rang. He looked at the screen, unknown number. He let it ring twice, then answered. Yes. The voice on the other end was formal, practiced. Mr. Obi, this is Femi Adejumo calling from the Okonkwo Development Group. The board has voted to move forward on the Lekki phase expansion, and your involvement remains critical. I have given my answer, Emeka said. We are offering a revised package. My answer has not changed. A careful pause on the other end. Mr. Obi, with respect, your continued absence is creating instability. Investors are asking questions. The group needs you in the room. Emeka looked out at the street. A child was chasing a football down the gutter. I will come when I decide to, he said, and ended the call. He slipped the phone into his pocket. The peace of the morning reasserted itself, but it was thinner now, because that world, the one he had deliberately stepped away from, was still reaching for him. His friend Chica appeared at the gate, holding 2 bottles of cold Fanta, grinning. Trouble? Chica asked, nodding at the phone. Nothing I cannot manage, Emeka said. Chica handed him a bottle. That is what you always say. He leaned against the gate. No, one day someone is going to ask you to explain how a man living in a 2-bedroom in Ketu somehow solves half of Lagos's problems without leaving the compound. Emeka looked at him. Maybe I just know how to fix things. Chica laughed. Lagos would have made you rich years ago if that were true. Emeka said nothing, because Lagos had done exactly that, and taken more in return than anyone standing in this compound could imagine. The drive that brought Adaze to that part of town was unplanned. That was the first unusual thing. She did not do unplanned. Her schedule had been immovable for years. Every hour accounted for, every route pre-confirmed. But the site inspection had run over, her usual route back to the island was completely blocked, and Ibrahim, her driver of 4 years, had taken an alternate way through Ketu. Then the car made a sound it was not supposed to make. Then it stopped. Completely. In the middle of a street that Google Maps had not prepared her for. Ibrahim popped the hood. Heat rose from the engine. He muttered under his breath, wiping sweat from his forehead. Through the window, Adaze watched him, irritation tightening her jaw. She checked her phone, no network. She pushed the car door open. The air hit her immediately. Real heat, not the recycled kind, the actual Lagos afternoon heat that does not negotiate. Madam, I think it overheated, Ibrahim said, not quite meeting her eyes. How long? She asked. He hesitated. I am not sure. That was the wrong answer. She exhaled and looked around. Shops, street vendors, an informal barber operating under a beach umbrella, and then from a few meters away. You will want to let the engine cool before you touch it again. She turned. A man stood a short distance from the car, tall, lean, simple clothes, a plain shirt, dark trousers, dusty sneakers. He was not dressed for any office she had ever walked into. He was not trying to be. But he was watching the car with the calm, interested expression of someone who actually knew what he was looking at. Ibrahim stiffened. I know engines. The man nodded easily. I am sure you do, but if it is heat stress, opening it now makes it worse. His tone carried no challenge, only certainty. Adaze studied him. Can you fix it? A slight pause. Maybe, he said, if there is time. She looked at Ibrahim. Ibrahim gave the faintest shrug. Try, she said to the stranger. He set down a small bag he had been carrying and crouched beside the engine without ceremony. No showmanship, no effort to impress. He worked quietly, methodically, the way people work when they are genuinely concentrating rather than performing. Adaze watched him. You are not from this side, he said, not looking up. She raised an eyebrow. What makes you say that? The corner of his mouth curved slightly. The car, the shoes, the way you are standing like you are waiting for the ground to behave. Despite herself, she almost smiled. Observation is your skill? She asked. It helps, he said simply. He adjusted something, stood. Try it, he said to Ibrahim. The engine coughed, then caught, steady, running. Ibrahim exhaled audibly. Adaze looked at the man. You fixed it. I adjusted it, he corrected. You will need a proper look at it later. Not a trace of ego in his voice, no angling for credit, just accuracy. She reached into her bag, pulled out money, extended it toward him. He looked at it, then at her, and shook his head. No. Adaze blinked. You helped me. Yes, he said. That is not the same as a transaction. The words landed quietly. Something about them felt foreign to her. Not offensive, not confusing, just genuinely unfamiliar. In her world, everything was an exchange. Every gesture had a return. Everyone needs something, she said. He met her gaze directly. Not everything is about needing. Silence. The traffic moved around them. Somewhere nearby, someone blasted music from a workshop. But in that small square of pavement, something had paused. "Then what do you want?" she asked. He picked up his bag. "Nothing." He turned to go, then glanced back. "Drive carefully." And he walked away. No drama, no lingering. Just gone. Adaeze stood there longer than she should have. "Madam," Ibrahim said gently, "we should go." She did not answer immediately. She was still looking at the empty spot where the man had stood. She got back into the car. As they pulled away, she finally spoke. "His name, did you catch it?" Ibrahim shook his head. She looked out the window. She had not asked either, and somehow that bothered her more than the broken engine ever had. 4 days later, Adaze canceled a non-essential afternoon meeting and told Ibrahim to bring the car around. "Where to, madam?" he asked. She paused, only for a second. "Ketu." Ibrahim did not ask why. He had learned over 4 years that when Adaze made a decision with that tone, quiet, certain, not quite explainable, the right response was simply to drive. She did not review files on the way, did not check messages. She watched the city change texture as they moved, glass and steel softening into zinc and cement, wide boulevards narrowing into streets that had character the new buildings did not. When they reached the area where the car had stopped, she spoke again. "Ask around. The man who helped us. Someone will know him." Ibrahim stepped out. He came back a few minutes later. "They know him," Ibrahim said. "Emeka. He lives just up the road." The car moved again, slower now, more deliberate. People looked up as it passed. A car like this was unusual here, and unusual things attract attention. When they stopped, Adaze stepped out into the afternoon and immediately scanned the area. Then she saw him, standing outside his compound, talking to an older woman completely at ease, no different from the man she had met days ago. She walked toward him. He saw her when she was still a few meters away. Something in his expression shifted, not surprise, recognition. "You came back," he said. "I do not get lost," she said. He almost smiled. "No one comes here by accident." "Maybe I am not like most people." He looked at her steadily. "That much is clear." There was a small pause, not uncomfortable, like breathing. They walked, not because there was anywhere to go, because somehow walking felt more natural than standing still. He greeted people as they passed, called them by name, asked about ailments and children and work. They responded the way people do when they genuinely trust someone, not with performance, with ease. Adaze watched all of it. "Why do they listen to you?" she asked. He glanced at her. "I listened to them first." She did not have a response for that. They stopped at a small kiosk near the end of the road. He bought 2 bottles of water and handed her one without asking if she wanted it. She took it, drank. The water was cold and real, and somehow the right thing in that moment. "You are not just someone who fixes cars," she said eventually. It was not a question. He did not answer immediately. "What makes you say that?" "The way people look at you," she said, "like they owe you something." He shook his head. "They do not owe me anything." She watched him. "Then why do they act like they do?" He considered it. "Because I never asked them to." She held that for a moment. Then, "I have to go." He nodded. "You always do." She paused. "You are not curious about me?" "I am," he said. "Then why do you not ask?" He looked at her directly. "Because if you want me to know, you will tell me." She held his gaze, and for the first time in a very long time, someone made her feel like honesty was a real option. "Maybe I will," she said. "Maybe," he replied. She walked back to the car, but she did not feel like she was leaving something behind. She felt like something had started, and she did not have a name for it yet. The story broke on a Thursday. By Friday, it was everywhere. A gossip page posted first a blurry photo of Addie's walking down a Ketu street beside a man who was very clearly not who Lagos expected her to be seen with. By Saturday, the major outlets had picked it up. CEO of ONU Holdings spotted with mystery man. The comment sections were not kind, neither were the boardrooms. By the time Adais walked into the conference room Monday morning, she could feel the atmosphere before anyone spoke. Chief Eze Okoye sat at the head of the table, calm, composed, waiting. The other board members were still. Too still. "Miss Onu," Chief Okoye said, "thank you for joining us." She took her seat. "I was not aware I had a choice." He tapped a remote. The screen behind him lit up with the photos, enlarged, unmistakable. "We would appreciate some context," he said. Adais looked at the screen, then back at him. "There is no context necessary." The room shifted. Another board member, Wele Adeola, leaned forward. "With respect, Adais, your image is not a private matter. You carry this company in every room you enter. What you are describing," she said evenly, "is not concern for the company. It is concern for control." Chief Okoye did not flinch. "Call it what you like. The perception is real. Investors are calling. Partners are reconsidering. All because our CEO has been seen repeatedly with someone who offers this company no strategic value." There it was, direct, deliberate, cold. Adais held his gaze. "And what value?" she asked quietly. "Do you think built this company?" Nobody answered, because they all knew. She had built it before any of them had taken her seriously. "This is your final notice," Okoye said. "Distance yourself from this situation, or we will be compelled to initiate a leadership review." The threat was no longer implied. It was real, sitting in the middle of the table, waiting to be acknowledged. Adais stood slowly. "I did not build ONU Holdings to take instructions about my personal life from a board that arrived after the foundation was already laid." She picked up her folder. "This meeting is over," and she walked out. No shouting, no slamming of doors, just intention. But as she stepped into the corridor, she knew. The war was no longer coming. It had arrived. Her phone was ringing before she reached her office. She ignored most of the calls. Bimpy was waiting inside, pacing. "You saw it?" "I lived it," Adais said. "No, this." Bimpy turned the laptop toward her. A new article. Insider sources. ONU Holdings CEO's personal entanglement may trigger emergency leadership review. Adaisi's jaw tightened. That came from inside. "Yes," Bimpy said. "And there is more." She scrolled down. "Someone is digging into him, publicly. They are going after the narrative around him, too." Adais felt something shift. Not fear, something sharper. They did not know him. They had no reason to go after him, except that he was connected to her. And in their world, that was enough. That evening, a message arrived from an unknown number. Simple, deliberate. 6 words. "You should walk away, for his sake." Adais read it twice, set her phone down, looked out at the city. She had faced opposition before. Legal threats, sabotage, calculated betrayal dressed as business. But this was different, because this time, someone else was in the crossfire. Someone who had done nothing except be exactly who he was. 3 days later, she made a decision, not in a meeting, not under pressure, alone, in the early morning before the city fully woke up. She made the drive herself this time, no Ibrahim. Just her and the road and the thing she had decided to do. When she found him, Emeka was outside, talking to a mechanic friend. He saw her face before she said a word. "What is wrong?" he asked. She stopped in front of him. "I cannot come back here," she said. The words came out quieter than she had intended. He did not interrupt, did not rush to fill the silence, just waited. "People are watching," she said. "They are digging into who you are. And they will not stop. This," she gestured between them, "it has consequences." He stepped slightly closer, not crowding her, just present. "Everything has consequences," he said. "That does not mean you run from them." "I am not running," she said more sharply than she meant to. I am protecting you. He held her gaze. Who protects you? She had no answer for that, because the honest answer was, no one ever had. I do not need protecting, she said finally. He nodded. All right. Just that. No argument. No pushback. And somehow that, his stillness, his complete absence of drama, hurt more than a fight would have. You are not even going to ask me to stay? She said. He looked at her steadily. If you wanted to stay, you would not be preparing to leave. She absorbed that, held it. Then, because she had no more words, she said, I am sorry. He nodded once, stepped back, created a space that felt final without being cruel. She walked to her car. She did not look back. If she had, she was not certain she would have kept walking. The door closed, the engine started, and she drove out of Ketu and back toward the skyline she had built, carrying a feeling she could not name and did not know what to do with. Behind her, Amika stood still until the car was gone. His expression did not collapse. He was not performing calm. He was calm. But something in him had registered the moment. Because two worlds, the one he had left and the one he had chosen, had just collided, and neither of them would sit still again. The wedding announcement came 3 weeks later. Lagos did not quietly absorb it. Lagos erupted. CEO Adaize Onu announces marriage. The groom's identity triggered immediate confusion, then mockery, then the kind of frenzied speculation that fills every platform simultaneously. Comment sections overflowed, television panels were restructured midweek to accommodate the discussion. The verdict was swift and nearly unanimous. Disbelief. Inside Onu Holdings, the response was colder, more controlled, but no less brutal. In the corridors, in the side conversations before meetings started, in the messages that moved through encrypted chats, she is done. The wedding venue was everything Lagos expected of Adaeze Onu. Grand, immaculate, a hall filled with crystal and ambition, attended by people whose names moved markets. Every powerful face in her world was there, investors, politicians, society elites. They came to witness. Some came to document. Some came because they genuinely could not believe it and needed to see it for themselves. At the front of the hall, Chief Okoye stood talking quietly to Wale Adeola. She still has time, Wale murmured. Okoye shook his head. She made her choice the moment she refused ours. Backstage, Adaeze stood alone. The mirror showed her exactly what she had always shown the world. Composed, elegant, in control. But beneath that, something different. A stillness that came not from calm but from certainty. Bimpy appeared at the door. You do not have to do this, she said softly. You keep saying that, Adaeze replied. You keep not listening. Bimpy stepped closer. This will change everything. I know. And him? You really know who you are stepping toward? Adaeze paused. The honest answer was, not completely. She did not know all of his story. Not yet. But she knew the things that mattered when everything else was stripped away. He had never performed for her. He had never needed anything from her. He had never tried to be anyone other than who he was. He is real, she said finally. Bimpy exhaled. Reality is what undoes people like us. Adaeze looked at her. Or what saves us. A knock at the door. Time. The music began. Ceremonial, composed, and the doors opened. She walked out. Every eye in the room found her instantly. The hall went quiet, the way it always did when Adaeze Onu entered a room. She walked steadily down the aisle, and then the murmur started. Because, waiting at the end of that aisle was Emeka Obi, dressed in clean, simple, traditional attire, no luxury, no performance, not a single concession to the room, standing exactly as he always stood, grounded, unhurried, unbothered by the scale of what surrounded him. The contrast was impossible to miss. The whispers spread quickly. Someone near the back laughed. Someone else did not bother to keep their voice low. Adaeze heard every word and kept walking. When she reached him and their eyes met, the room ceased to exist. He looked at her the way he always had, like she was a complete person, not a profile, not a position. You came, he said quietly. I said I would, she replied. The ceremony began, and then, cutting through everything, a voice, clear, deliberate, designed to land. It was Whale Adiola, standing from his seat. With respect, Adaizi, this is beneath everything you have built, beneath this company, beneath this room. A sharp silence fell. Adaiz did not move. Did not flinch. Whale's voice carried further. You are embarrassing yourself. She turned her head slowly and looked at him. Sit down. Or what? He said, the smirk in his voice audible. The room waited. She spoke without raising her voice. Or you will prove that you have mistaken a position for a personality. A few audible gasps. Whale's expression flickered. You are throwing away everything. I am choosing something you clearly do not understand, she said. He scoffed. And what is that? She did not hesitate. Value. The word landed differently from everything that had come before. Not loud, not dramatic, just accurate and real. Whale sat back down. The officiant cleared his throat. The ceremony resumed. When Emeka spoke his vows, his voice was unhurried. I do not have what fills this room, but I will never offer you less than who I am. A different kind of silence followed. Not mockery. Listening. When Adai spoke, her voice did not waver. I do not need what fills this room. I choose what is real. And even those who came to watch it fail could not entirely dismiss what they had witnessed. The call came that same evening. She had barely been home an hour. Chief Okoye's voice was measured, formal, final. Effective immediately, the board has voted to initiate a leadership review. Your executive authority is suspended pending the outcome. Adaiz held the phone still. You are removing me. We are protecting the company, he said. You made a mistake, she said. You already did, he replied. The line went dead. She set the phone on the counter, did not move for a moment. Behind her, Emeka's voice was quiet. What happened? She looked out at the city lights. They have taken the company, she said, not dramatically, just honestly. He stepped closer, not too close, just present. And you? He asked. What about me? Have they taken you? The question sat differently. She looked at him. I do not know, she admitted. He nodded. Good. She frowned. Good? Now you will find out who you are without it. She looked at him for a long moment. This man who the entire room had laughed at, who had refused her money and her explanations and her careful distance, who stood in the middle of everything she had built and looked more grounded than anything in it. What now? She asked. He held her gaze. That depends on you. The first morning without authority felt deeply foreign. For years, Adaiz had woken to urgency, the hum of a system that needed her. Now there was silence. Her phone lit up, but not with the things that had once defined her days. She sat at the edge of her bed, looking at it. Emeka appeared in the doorway carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed her one without commentary. She took it, warm, straightforward, real. You are not used to stillness, he said. I am not used to being irrelevant, she said quietly. He sat across from her. You are not irrelevant. To them I am. He watched her. Is that who you measure yourself by? She did not answer. Because she was beginning to understand that maybe, for longer than she wanted to admit, it had been. The days that followed moved slowly. She tried to fill them the way she always had, with work, with structure, with forward motion. But the access was gone. The authority was suspended. Onu Holdings continued without her. And that quiet, relentless continuation hurt in ways she had not anticipated. Not because she needed the power, but because she had built it from nothing and it moved as though she had never existed. You are holding on to something that has already moved, Emeka said one afternoon. They were sitting in her living room, afternoon light coming through the windows. You talk about letting go like it is simple, she said. He looked at her. I never said it was simple. I said it is necessary. She studied him, really studied him. The calm that did not come from having nothing to lose, but from something she had not yet placed. "Who are you?" she asked one evening, not casually, not rhetorically. She had received a file on her phone from an unknown number, transactions, ownership structures, layered corporate identities, and a name threaded through all of it, quietly, deliberately. OB Capital Investments. She turned the phone toward him. He looked at the screen, then at her, and said nothing immediately, which was its own kind of answer. "You have been hiding," she said. He met her gaze. "I have been living." "Do not do that," she said. "Do not answer a question with another question." A long pause. Then he nodded once. "All right." "OB Capital," she said. A confirmation, not a question. "Yes," he said. The word landed quietly, but altered everything in the room. "You are telling me," she began, working through it carefully, "that while I was losing my company, you watched." "I was waiting," he said. "For what?" "For you to choose." Adaze felt something rise in her chest. "I chose you, and I needed to know why." "I needed to know if your choice was real," he said, "or whether it would have been different if you had known everything." She stared at him. "So you let me lose everything to run a test?" He did not flinch. "I did not take anything from you. They did." "But you knew," she said. "You knew what they were doing. You could have stopped it." He held her gaze steadily. "Yes." A silence that tasted like betrayal. "And you did not." "Because if I had," he said, "you would never know what you truly valued." She turned away, paced, came back. "You do not get to decide that for me." "You are right," he said, "but I did." His honesty hit harder than a deflection would have. No softening, no excuse, just the truth, sitting there waiting for her to decide what to do with it. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked, quieter now. He took a breath. "Because the moment I told you, everything between us would be different." "Would you have come back to Ketu if you knew who I was?" She did not answer, because she genuinely did not know. "Would you have chosen me?" he pressed gently. Silence, longer than either of them expected. "I do not know," she admitted. He nodded. "That is why I waited." She looked at him for a long time. "You should have trusted me." "I did," he said. "You trusted a test," she replied. He did not argue, because she was not wrong. "I needed certainty," he said. "I needed honesty," she replied. The words balanced each other in the air between them, not canceling out, confronting. For the first time since they had met, they were standing on equal ground. No performance from either side, no distance, no titles. Just two people who had walked through something difficult and were now deciding what to do with the aftermath. "What now?" she said. He looked at her. "You know what you are without the company now," he said. "And I know what I am without the secrets." She exhaled. "Is that supposed to be a fresh start?" He almost smiled. "That is up to you." "That is..." She held his gaze, and somewhere between everything she had lost and everything she had not yet found, a decision formed, not because it was easy, because it was honest, and sometimes that was the only foundation that held. She did not stay down. She had never stayed down. The morning after their reckoning, Adaze woke before Emeka and sat at the window with coffee, watching Lagos begin its daily performance. The city did not know what she was carrying. It never did. But she had made her peace with that. She picked up her phone and dialed Bimpy. 2 rings. "You did not answer for 4 days," Bimpy said immediately. "I was thinking," Adaze replied. A pause. "Tell me you have a plan." "I need everything you have on the board's movement since the suspension, every transaction, every restructure, every name that appeared in any filing." Bimpy's voice sharpened. "You are coming back." "I never left," Adaze said. "I just stopped being where they expected me to be." Emeka appeared in the doorway as she ended the call. He watched her, the way she sat, the way she held the phone. He recognized something in it. "You are going back," he said. She looked at him. "They were wrong," she said simply. Not with fire, not with bitterness, just fact. He nodded. That is different from before. Yes, she said, it is. Because before, she had fought to prove herself, to make herself undeniable, to build something so solid that no one could question her right to occupy the space she occupied. This time was different. This time she was not fighting to prove anything. She was fighting because what they had done was wrong, and because it was hers. The documentation Bimpy compiled confirmed what Adaze had already suspected. The board had not just suspended her, they had used the window to quietly restructure asset ownership across multiple subsidiary companies. Shell entities, layered transfers, clean on paper, deliberate in intent. They were stripping the company while no one was looking. They moved fast, Bimpy said when they met. Because they assumed you would not move at all, Adaze replied. She turned the screen toward Bimpy, the file Emeka had not denied. OB Capital, the ownership stakes, the silent influence that had been present for longer than either of them had known. Bimpy read it slowly. This is him. Yes. Bimpy looked up. And you are still with him? Yes. Bimpy absorbed that. Then we use what we have. We use the truth, Adaze said, which is more than enough. The shareholder meeting was called with minimal notice and maximum impact. The message that went out was short, direct, and arrived on every relevant phone simultaneously. Emergency shareholder meeting. Attendance required, no explanation, no context, just authority, the kind that still commanded a room, even without a title attached to it. Chief Okoye arrived last, as always, sat at the head of the table, comfortable, expecting a formality. Let us begin, he said. Then the door opened, and Adaeze Onu walked in. The room stilled completely, not the polite still of a scheduled meeting, the visceral still of something unexpected. Wale Adeola sat up. Okoye's eyes narrowed, but only for a fraction of a second. Then he arranged his face into smoothness. Miss Onu, he said, this is irregular. She crossed the room unhurried and placed a folder on the table. Everything you have done in the past 3 weeks is documented, she said. Every transfer, every restructure, every name. She looked at him directly. Read it. He picked it up slowly. His eyes moved across the first page, the second. Something shifted in his expression, not collapse, something more careful, more controlled, and because of that, more telling. The door opened again, and Emeka Obi walked in. He moved without announcement, without drama, dressed simply, carrying nothing, but the room reacted immediately, because enough people in that room had now connected. The name OB Capital to the quiet, unhurried man standing in the doorway. A murmur moved through the space. Okoye's composure held, but barely. OB Capital, he said. Emeka looked at him. Yes. He walked to stand beside Adaeze, not in front of her, beside her, equal. You have been concealing your involvement, Okoye said. You have been misrepresenting yours, Emeka replied simply. Bimpy stepped forward and placed additional documents on the table. The unauthorized transfers, the breach of fiduciary duty, the paper trail that went exactly where they had not wanted it to go. Wale's voice rose. You think this ends here? You think you win? Adaze looked at him calmly. I think it reveals you, she said, which is worse. Because destruction could be managed, reputation could be rebuilt, but truth, documented, time-stamped, attached to names, truth stayed. A senior board member cleared his throat. What happens now? The question hung over the room, because for the first time they were genuinely asking. Adaze looked around the table, at every face that had once doubted her, dismissed her, tried to remove her, and she felt something she had not expected. Not triumph, clarity. This company was not built to serve the comfort of any one group, she said. It was built on something more durable than that. She paused. You violated that, and there are consequences. Chief Okoye did not argue, because he understood something now. The terms had changed, and he was not setting them anymore. The restructuring that followed was thorough and unsentimental. Okoye stepped down within the week, citing personal reasons. Adeola's position was dissolved when the evidence was formally submitted to the relevant regulatory body. The other board members who had remained silent, who had watched without intervening, were given a choice: commit to a new governance framework or exit. Several exited. Adaze returned to her office not with fanfare but with intention. The same space, the same view, but she occupied it differently now, less like a fortress she was defending, more like a place she had chosen freely. The first meeting she convened was not about profit targets or expansion strategy, it was about direction. "We lost our way," she said simply to the assembled team, "not in the numbers, in the principle." She did not lecture, she did not perform, she simply made it clear what ONU Holdings would now be measured by and invited everyone in the room to decide whether they were part of that. Some people left, more stayed, and those who stayed worked differently. Emeka never moved into her world. He did not need to. He remained in Ketu, still fixing things that needed fixing, still waking early, still being the kind of person that a neighborhood quietly organizes itself around. But Adaze visited often, and she changed each time she did. Not in ways that were visible from the outside, but real. She sat with people she did not need to sit with. She listened to things that had no strategic value. She learned what patience actually felt like, not as a tactic but as a practice. And every time she returned to Lagos, she carried something with her that no boardroom had ever given her. One evening, sitting outside near his compound, the city absent from the sky above them and the stars genuinely visible, she asked him, "Do you regret it? Any of it?" He thought about it. The way he always thought about things, without performance. "I regret what it cost you," he said. "Not the choice." She looked at him. "I understand that now," she said. And she did, because the path had been painful and the test had not been entirely fair. But the person who had come through it, who had lost a title and found herself, who had chosen honestly and rebuilt from that honesty, that person was truer than the one who had stood at the 40th floor window calculating everything. "For a long time," she said quietly, "I thought success meant building something no one could take from me." He waited. "And now?" She looked up at the stars. "Now I think it means becoming someone no one can break." The words moved between them and settled, not as a conclusion, as a beginning. Because out here, without the glass and the pressure and the cameras and the board, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely way sat in the dark and breathed the same air, not as the CEO and the man the room had laughed at, not as the powerful woman and the quiet stranger, just as people who had chosen each other completely and without reservation. And that, in the end, was the only thing that had ever mattered. In a world that measures worth through titles and optics and strategic alignment, it is easy to forget something simple and stubborn and true. Positions can be removed, power can shift, the room can decide you are no longer useful. But who you are, truly, underneath all of it, no one can take that, not unless you hand it to them. Adaze spent years building something the world could see, only to discover that the most important thing she had ever built was herself. Emeka, who had access to everything Lagos valued, chose to live as if none of it defined him, until he found something that did. Neither story was clean, neither path was straight, but both led to the same place, a choice made honestly, a life built on something real. So ask yourself, if everything you were known for disappeared tomorrow, who would you still be? And would that be enough? If this story stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment and let us know. Where are you watching from and what time is it where you are? And if you want more powerful stories like this one, do not forget to like, subscribe, and share. This has been African Heritage Tales, and we will see you in the next one.